Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, against the backdrop of increased tensions, President Park Geun-hye says South Korea remains open to dialogue with North Korea, but it will stand firm against any further provocations. Korea's newest mobile lifestyle platform company, Daum Kakao, is said to become the biggest firm on the tech-heavy KOSDAQ, boasting a market cap of nearly $7.5 billion US. Plus, the strongest tropical cyclone of the year, Typhoon Vongfong, batters Japan, injuring dozens and forcing hundreds of thousands to evacuate their homes. Daybreak begins now.
Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, October 14th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye has once again emphasized that Seoul is ready and open for high-level talks with Pyongyang. This despite recent contradictory signals from the north. Our Choi-sun starts us off.
3 days after North Korea fired machine gun rounds in retaliation of South Korean propaganda leaflets, President Park Geun-hye stressed that the two Koreas need to engage in talks.
전쟁 중에도 대화는 필요하다는 말이 있듯이 한반도 긴장 완화와 평화 정착을 위해서는 대화가 지속되어야 합니다. 고위급 접촉을 남북 관계 개선의 기회로 삼아야 합니다.
Pyongyang's latest hostile act came just days after it took Seoul up on an offer for talks. At our Unification Preparatory Committee's second meeting Monday, the South Korean president said when the two sides meet, they should talk over the possibility of the South lifting sanctions that were imposed after the North torpedoed a South Korean warship in 2010. By referring to the sanctions, a major bone of contention between the two Koreas for the first time since taking office last year, President Park is thought to have placed more weight on settling issues through dialogue. The president, however, took a cautious tone about mending ties with North Korea, saying inter-Korean relations have always been double-sided.
섣부른 판단으로 남북 관계의 환경을 바꾸는 것은 매우 위험한 일입니다. 그렇기 때문에 정부는 앞으로도 도발에는 단호히 대처해 나가되 대화의 문은 항상 열어놓고 평화 정착을 위해 노력해 나갈 것입니다.
As for a campaign to have both Koreas prepare for unification, the president called for a detailed plan to break ground on her envisioned DMZ Peace Park, a charter to instill public will for unification and increase support for the North's humanitarian needs. 최유선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, the chairman of South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has no major problems in running his country, responding to a question about Kim's alleged health issues at a parliamentary audit on Tuesday. Choi Yoon-hee said the young leader was not very seriously ill, and as far as they know, his health does not have a huge bearing on his control. Kim Jong-un hasn't been seen in public since September 3rd. Meanwhile, on the same day, the head of South Korea's Defense Intelligence Agency said that the North seems to be operating the Yongbyon nuclear reactor, adding that there was no imminent signs of a nuclear test at the North's Punggye-ri nuclear test site. However, on a related note, a US-based think tank has reiterated that it believes North Korea has shut down a key reactor at one of its major nuclear sites. The Institute for Science and International Security said, however, that its assessment of a possible partial or total shutdown of the 5-megawatt reactor at the Yongbyon nuclear facility does not imply that it has been permanently shut down. Early this month, the Institute released imagery of the nuclear reactor that indicated it had partially or completely ceased operations. In this latest report, the Institute goes on to say the reactor is expected to restart, and evidence of that would be the discharge of water from the secondary cooling system. It says the reactor has probably been shut down for maintenance or partial refueling. North Korea continues to send very strong warnings against South Korean activists flying anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. The regime is stressing that it has not backed out of scheduled inter-Korean talks, but it is urging Seoul to make what it calls the right decision. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea has warned it will step up its physical strikes if South Korean activists continue to fly anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. In a statement released Sunday, the North said its military attack, designed to destroy balloons carrying anti-North leaflets on Friday, shows its warnings are not empty words. But Pyongyang did not back out of an agreement to hold a second round of high-level talks.
There is still chance for making a decision. South Korea should acknowledge our sincere efforts to write a new history for improving North-South relations and not pour cold water on the opportunity.
In response, South Korea said Monday that the high-level talks, slated for late this month or early November, should take place as planned, but reiterated it will not interfere with civilian activities.
I believe it is the government's duty to guarantee the freedom of expression unless the law specifies otherwise. At the same time, we must continue efforts to protect our people and property from North Korean threats.
Seoul's defense ministry said Monday that Pyongyang, through their military hotline on Saturday, declared the start of a battle to destroy South Korean balloons carrying the controversial leaflets. Considering that South Korea had warned earlier of strong countermeasures against further provocations, experts say the latest military tensions could put inter-Korean relations back at square one. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's most popular messaging app, KakaoTalk, says it will stop fully cooperating with authorities seeking to access private messages sent on that application. Speaking at a hastily arranged press conference in Seoul on Monday, Lee Seol-gu, CEO at Daum Kakao, which owns KakaoTalk, apologized for its initial handling of privacy issues. The government's recent announcement of what it called stern punishment for online criticism prompted a great many Koreans to drop KakaoTalk in favor of foreign messaging apps. He admitted that they had lost some users and saw a drop in mobile traffic, but he wouldn't be drawn on how many people quit its service.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, French economist Jean Tirole has been named winner of this year's Nobel Prize for Economics for his research on market power and regulation. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences said the 61-year-old had clarified how to understand and regulate industries with a few powerful firms. Tirole works at the Toulouse School of Economics in France. The Academy added that his work had a strong bearing on how governments deal with mergers or cartels and how they should regulate monopolies. It was the first economics prize without an American winner since 1999. The International Monetary Fund has called for aggressive measures to prevent the global economy from slumping back into recession. Economists there are advising against the loose monetary policies of the recent past, instead calling for some serious restraint. Our Song Ji-son has the details.
At the IMF semi-annual meetings that wrapped up over the weekend, global leaders sounded an alarm about the slowing world economy. On top of this, economists and policymakers, and even some investors, warned that expansionary monetary policies could trigger a global financial crisis. They pointed to inflated asset prices and the increasing debt levels of many countries. bond markets in the Eurozone are booming, and China's debt is hovering at a record high despite slowing growth. Share prices in the U.S. have also soared in recent months, although there was a sharp fall last week. Still, the European Central Bank is pressuring its member countries to buy government bonds in the Eurozone, which would trigger even more of a global buying frenzy for the bonds. Chief economists and major institutions say central bankers need to be aware of asset bubbles and act accordingly. According to a report by the IMF, asset management firms have increased their purchase of bonds from emerging markets to nearly $2 trillion from $265 billion in the early 2000s. Regulators worry that retail investors will pull their money out at the same time when U.S. interest rates rise, triggering another market convulsion in emerging economies. The Federal Reserve is set to end its current bond buying program this month. Its next step would be raising its near-zero rate, probably in mid-2015. The IMF also called on central banks to be careful when communicating changes in policy in order to avoid financial market shocks. 송지선, Arirang News.
Now, back to Daum Kakao, and they're going to become the biggest firm on Korea's tech-heavy KOSDAQ in terms of market capitalization, following the listing of additional shares on this Tuesday. Now, according to the Korea Exchange, 43 million shares will be added today, giving the company a total of nearly 57 million shares. Now, in accordance with last Friday's closing price, this means Daum Kakao's market capitalization will stand at roughly $7.4 billion, putting it far ahead of the current number one, Celltrion, which reached about $4.1 billion. Daum Kakao was created early this month with the merger of Kakao Corporation and Daum Communications, Korea's two most tracked IT firms. Now, a new poll shows an overwhelming majority of Korean university students have a very low opinion of the politicians that supposedly represent them. A survey conducted by a local newspaper on nearly 2,000 college students this August and September found that 85% of respondents said politicians were the most unreliable group in Korean society. Journalists were next on the list, but much, much lower, down at 7%. Followed by soldiers and businessmen at around 2% each. As for the most reliable, almost 16% pointed to themselves, university students, and then to non-profits and farmers. On the most pressing issue in Korea, more than a quarter said it was corruption, followed by the widening gap between the rich and the poor. Now, a growing number of Korean firms are making a more concerted effort these days to give back to society, not only here at home, but overseas as well. While no one really expects them to solve the world's problems, a touch of corporate social responsibility benefits the companies themselves and, of course, the communities around them. Paulie reports.
This is Dream Center, established in Indonesia by Hyundai Motor with the help of the Korea International Cooperation Agency. The facility offers practical lessons on maintenance techniques to young students, which helps them find a job or launch their own businesses. The first Dream Center was set up last year in Ghana, a technical high school for automobiles that was built for local students.
Korea, through Hyundai and KOICA, helping us to develop our country, to help the youth through this engineering skills acquisition. We are happy with that.
The group also operates a project called the Happy Move Global Youth Volunteer Program, which has been sending volunteers across the globe every year since its foundation in 2008. Kia Motors' Green Light project provides assistance to African nations, while Samsung's Amazon School in Brazil gives education opportunity to underprivileged kids. In Vietnam, both Hillsong and SK are operating a free medical service clinic for children.
To fulfill our responsibility as a global firm, we are making diverse social contributions, not just in Korea, but overseas as well. We hope these activities will also help the nation improve its global status.
With more local companies developing inroads into international markets, their social contribution activities are expected to continue gathering speed. helping to widen their profit sharing by helping communities in need. Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Right, well, before we get to the international news segment, we do have some news coming in, as you can see on the screen there. North Korea's Central Korean News Agency is reporting that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been seen in public inspecting a residential zone. That's just file footage there. This marks his first public appearance in some 40 days. He was last seen in public all the way back on September 3rd. We will, of course, bring you more details on this in our next newscasts. Right, well, now it's time for our international headlines. The news we're following on this Tuesday morning here in Korea. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
Hello, Mark. We felt the effects of it here in Korea yesterday. Tropical storm Vongfong may have been downgraded from a typhoon as it hit Japan's mainland, but it still packed a mean punch. Weather officials said the powerful storm was hurling winds of up to 108 kilometers per hour as it made its way northeast, dousing Japan with heavy rains and causing major transport disruptions at the end of a 3-day holiday there. Some 500 local flights were grounded as many trains in western cities were suspended as well. NHK reports at least one person was killed, a 90-year-old man in Totori Prefecture found in an irrigation channel. More than 90 people were injured. Evacuation advisories were issued in several prefectures, affecting more than 800,000 people. The country's meteorological agency is warning of more damage in the form of landslides and floods in the archipelago. The storm was forecast to reach Tokyo early Tuesday. Rival protesters in central Hong Kong have clashed in one of the biggest scenes of violence since the pro-democracy movement began there over 3 weeks ago. Tensions have been rising as anti-Occupy groups, from pro-Beijing supporters to taxi drivers, are demanding that demonstrators clear the streets. On Monday afternoon, chaos erupted as several hundred people stormed the main protest site, with police reportedly holding back the angry crowds. It isn't clear, though, who organized the flash mob, but some have blamed organized criminal gangs. Activist leaders have been calling on Beijing to grant fully democratic elections for the territory, a demand that the city's chief executive C.Y. Leung says will fall on deaf ears. And it is being called a stunning shift in strikingly open language. The Vatican has called for the church to welcome gays and lesbians, saying they have gifts and talents to offer the Christian community. The statement came in a preliminary report released at a halfway point of a closed-door Vatican meeting on the topic of family, where officials are debating traditionally controversial issues such as divorce, birth control, and homosexuality. While no doctrinal changes were proposed, the synod also said the church needed to recognize the positive aspects of civil unions and couples who cohabitate, with the goal of bringing them to a church wedding. A final document is expected to be issued on Saturday. And finally, a major gas deal was signed between Beijing and Moscow on Monday that would enable Russian gas supplies to be exported to China's northeast via the Power of Siberia pipeline, also known as the Eastern Route. The document was signed during a visit by China's Premier Li Keqiang to Moscow, together with Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev. The 40-year agreement laid the groundwork for both sides to cooperate in the spheres of engineering, construction, and operation of the gas pipeline infrastructure. An appendix was also signed between Russia's Gazprom and China National Petroleum Corporation that allows for a 5-year extension after that agreement expires.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off at Cheongwade. That's because a number of Korean Asian Games athletes were invited to a congratulatory luncheon by President Park Geun-hye on Monday. Now, 512 athletes and coaching staff members were invited to a congratulatory luncheon, including rhythmic gymnast Sonia and Jay and Olympic swimmer Park Tae-hwan. Now, in a speech, President Park Geun-hye thanked everyone for their hard work and stated that she was touched by their performance and sportsmanship at the Incheon Asian Games. She added that she'll be looking forward to their performance at the Rio Summer Games 2 years later, as she was given the Asian Games torch as a gift. And now moving over to the PGA this time, where the 2014-2015 season kicked off with the Fries.com Open in Napa, California. And the winner of the season opener, South Korea's very own Bae Sang-moon. Now, the 28-year-old who won his first PGA title last year at the HP Byron Nelson Championship won his second career PGA title after shooting a 15-under par overall to claim the top prize at the PGA Tour's 2014-2015 season opener. With the win, he joins Choi Kyung-ju and Yang Yong-eun as one of only 3 South Koreans to win at least 2 PGA Tour titles. And now shifting over to the Korean national football team this time, as the Taeguk Warriors are set to face off against Costa Rica later tonight after that impressive win against Paraguay last Friday. But the match against Costa Rica should be a tougher task for the Korean national team, as the 63rd ranked Korea looks overmatched against the 15th ranked Costa Rica on paper. But manager Uli Stilicke remained confident at the press conference on Monday, stating that he's confident that they will win the match, despite trying a new experiment with this lineup later tonight. Meanwhile, the match will take place at the Seoul World Cup Stadium at 8 p.m. And moving over to rhythmic gymnastics, where it seems like a congratulatory luncheon at Cheongwade wasn't the only major invitation Sonia and Jay received. In fact, she was also invited to the most famous gala show in rhythmic gymnastics. Euluska Gym, as it's called, invites some of the best rhythmic gymnasts in the world each year for a gala show. And after claiming Korea's first gold medal at the Asian Games, Sonia and Jay was invited to be a part of the most renowned gala show in the sport. Meanwhile, the event will take place in Vitoria, Spain on November 8th. And now finishing things off with some Monday night's KBO action, the SK Wyverns continue their amazing run, beating the Tucson Bears 7-6 after being down by 2 at the bottom of the ninth with the Nexon Heroes, beating the Kia Tigers 8-5 with Nexon's Seogun Chang setting a new single-season hits record with this 197th hit. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Samsung Lions trying to get close to another pennant as they take on the last-place Hanwha Eagles with their magic number at 2. Now going to the game here right off the bat, first inning with man on, Chet Tae-in deep to left center. There it goes, a 2-run shot, and the Samsung Lions take a 2-0 lead. A few plays later, Park Hae-min this time singles to center. In comes Lee Seung-yup as Samsung takes an early 3-0 lead. Now second inning, more from Samsung, this time Yamiako Navarro deep to left center, gone, and it's 4-0 Samsung. Now Asian Games star Lee Tae-young struggles on the mound, giving up 7 runs in just 2 innings. As the Samsung Lions absolutely crushed the Hanwha Eagles 22-1, lowering their magic number to 1. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. It's the chilliest morning of the season again. First freeze of the season will be seen in some of the central inland regions, and even cold wave advisory was issued in some parts of Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, and Chungcheong-do provinces this morning, as the morning lows are over 10 degrees lower than yesterday, and daily lows in those areas are kicking off below 3 degrees Celsius this morning. And for here in Seoul, daily lows are about 10 degrees lower than yesterday. But plenty of sunshine is in store today for the most of the time. But it seems like the afternoon will be much cooler than yesterday, as it will hardly make it to 20. So the chill in the air should continue to dominate the whole peninsula. With that in mind, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. Now, the low in Seoul started out at 10, then the daytime highs in the capital will be at 19, while Daegu and Busan will rise to 20 and Gwangju will peak at 21 this afternoon. Now, for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will see highs of 19 and Dokdo peaks at 14. Well, be sure to dress warmly before heading out to work or school today. And that's all I have for you at this hour. And let's send it back to Mark in the studio.
Well, thank you very much, Jion, for the weather there. And that's going to do it from us. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour at 7 a.m. Korea time. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.